All right, welcome on back, everybody, to First CSP, channel dedicated to bringing you the first council shoulder patch issue from all councils in Scouting America, both past and present. We actually have a viewer request for you today with Greater St. Louis Area 312. The Greater St. Louis Area Council was actually a name change in 1995 from the St. Louis Area 312 Council. And it existed from 1995 until just recently, 2018, when it was absorbed by Lewis and Clark 112, and then later absorbed by the Lincoln Trails Council, which is what that area is currently serviced by today. So when we got the viewer request in one of our very early videos, we actually went to the collection to check our Greater St. Louis, and we did have the first issue, which is the S1A. But we did also note that there are 3 variants of this S1 for Greater St. Louis area, and we did not have the S1B or C in the collection. So we actually held off on creating this video to see if we could go out and get the S1B and S1C. Now, for all the councils out there, that's not always possible. Sometimes they're just not available. Sometimes they're very, very expensive. But in this instance, we were actually able to go out and obtain the S1B and S1C. So we're going to be able to see all 3 of them here today on the channel, show you how they're similar, talk about their differences, and help you with identification if you're trying to find either the first issue or just identify what patch you might have in your collection. So let's head on over to the patch table and take a look at the S1A. So the S1A is defined by its dark blue border. We've got a white sky. They call these red clouds. Obviously, it kind of just looks like a waving flag. We have a yellow fleur-de-lis on the arch. The arch itself is silver mylar on the outside, and they list light gray on the underside there. And the arch ends up being one of the defining characteristics of these 3 issues, S1, A, B, and C. And then the lettering here is going to be in purple. We see listing Greater St. Louis Area Council. This purple lettering is the same as this along the bottom edge of the skyline. This looks a little bit more purple in person than it's coming across on the camera. So this is the first issue and first variant of the S1 for Greater St. Louis Area. So this is the S1A. Flip it over and look at the back. Again, the back fairly plain and is particularly distinctive when comparing to the other 2 editions. I do think in this case that the back will be helpful for identifying the different variations. I don't think that there's a bunch of production runs which may have different backs within the same variant, but I don't know that for sure. So we are, as is usually the case traditionally, guided by our descriptions of the front. And the overwhelming key point that they describe for the S1A is that the underside here of the St. Louis arch on the patch is going to be light gray. Let's take a look now at the S1B. So this is the S1B. We have that same dark blue border, white sky, red clouds, yellow fleur-de-lis. The arch again, silver mylar on the upper side, and the lower side is listed as lavender. Of the 3, again, each patch is primarily defined by the underside color of the arch here. The lavender color in visual appearance in person, to me, actually seems to be the darkest. Again, the lettering here is in purple, which is the same. This band that's embroidered here along the horizon is also in purple. It's coming across on my camera to be relatively blue, but this is distinct from the border when looking at it in person. If we're comparing this with the first, we're going to notice, first and foremost to me, what kind of stood out is the silver mylar. So when we go back in time, at least in my opinion, the older silver Mylars almost kind of had the silvering shiny part kind of as portions along the thread. So you'll see some parts look shiny and some parts kind of look dull. Everything as the Mylar threads have gone forward in production lines have evened out, and it's pretty silvery all the way across. So this one definitely has a distinctive look in comparison. Now they don't make that description in the collector's guide because there's not a great way for them to differentiate the two. But visually, the appearance is particularly different. So you have a little bit thinner and tighter fleur-de-lis, but the colors of those fleur-de-lis are relatively the same. Our purples here, the purple on the first looks quite a bit darker than what you see. This looks a bit lighter, a little bit more matte by comparison for the two. And then if you look at the back of the S1B, obviously we've got the BSA backing. It's going to be considerably different looking than the first. But both of these first two patches are listed as having the dark blue border. They're not the exact same shade. This one looks a little brighter on the S1B than the first one, but they are fairly similar. And if you were looking at photos online, it is going to stand out for these two patches as compared with the third, the S1C. All right, let's take a look here at the S1C, and then we'll kind of do some continue to do some comparisons there. So this is the S1C, and right off the bat, we're going to see that the main distinction is going to be the border. This border is listed as royal blue, and it's kind of interesting because in person, it looks the least royal blue. I would call this just blue, but I would actually think that the first two, which are listed as royal blue, as dark blue, would be more royal blue. But we've got the royal blue border, white sky, red clouds, yellow fleur-de-lis. This actually is the most yellow of the fleur-de-lis. When we compare it to the first two would look more along the lines of what we might call gold. But they do all just call all three yellow. And then the underside of the arch here, again, silver mylar, similar, more uniform silver mylar like the S1B. And then the bottom side here, they're calling dark gray. Now it's interesting because they call this dark gray and they call the other one lavender. They're exceptionally difficult to discern the two, even right next to each other. The border ends up being a much easier way to tell the difference. Now on the purple here, that's embroidered on the horizon and is the lettering, we're going to find that the purple is much more vibrant again and matches closer to the purple that was used on the S1A. All right, so let's compare this one to the S1A. We can see a pretty distinctive difference between the borders. So they call this dark blue, they call this royal blue. I think this one looks more royal blue and this one looks more just blue. We still get the very distinct difference between the light gray on the S1A and the dark gray on the S1C. Again, if you're comparing these fleur-de-lis, you're going to see this looks very yellow, kind of super bright, kind of light, and this looks more like what we would almost call gold traditionally. Just, the flat gold thread, not the gold mylar, but just the flat gold color used in patches at times. You will see that these purples look fairly similar. Again, the purples used here, fairly similar. This one has a pretty large green base area. Obviously, the S1As, it does seem like the borders cut pretty close to the text. Now, the one that can be a little bit difficult, in my opinion, again, we can look at the back here. This is also a BSA back, but it is a different BSA back than the S1B. I think the backs may be one of the best ways to help with identification if you can get a photo of the back, which sometimes is not available. The ones where the patch looks the most similar for the St. Louis Arch is going to be the S1B and the S1C. If I was just looking at these and only looking at the arch, I would call this dark gray and I would call this lavender, because this appears darker. The lavender does appear darker, but the border really kind of is the distinctive portion that's going to tell you which is which issue, because this border for the S1A and the S1B match, and the S1C has the different border. So whether you're going to call it dark blue, which they do in the collector's guide, or you're going to call it royal blue in person and this one blue, whatever you're using for those monikers, you're going to see these two borders look the same. So here is my S1A at the top, the lightest shade for the underside of the arch. Here's my S1B, which they're calling lavender. Those borders look pretty much the same, which is how it's listed. So S1A, S1B, and this one then has to be the S1C, and they're calling this dark gray. Again, if we want to compare the S1B and the S1C as far as the backing, the plastic back pattern is compared, you can see those are the two issues when trying to identify. So this is the whole set. They can be somewhat difficult to discern. We've got our S1A with light gray. We've got our S1B with lavender. These fleur-de-lis do look to be the same color. And then our S1C, which they're calling dark gray, and we can see has a much brighter and a little bit thinner fleur-de-lis for the yellow there. The S1B and S1C have very homogeneous silver mylar thread, and kind of the striated, older style, in my opinion, silver mylar thread is on the S1A. So hopefully that will help you if you're trying to identify for the first issues of Greater St. Louis Area 312. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a like. Please, we encourage you to share it with others so we can show these amazing pieces of scouting history and art to lots and lots of people. We really appreciate that. If there's a council that you would like to make a request for, just like this was a viewer request, we'd love to get that in the queue and out for you. So please, by all means, drop that in the comments. With that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next episode.